So, we need to elect Bernie, and we need a new party of, by, and for working people. To win Medicare for all, to end the racist mass incarceration system, and to win a bold Green New Deal to avoid climate catastrophe. And Green New Deal, 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 Green New Deal. And we need a powerful socialist movement to end all capitalist oppression and exploitation. Our immediate task is to go all out and win for Bernie. And to prevent the elite from rigging the primary against him. That's why my organization, Socialist Alternative, is calling for 1 million people in Milwaukee to have Bernie's back. My friends, history is calling on us. Are we ready? Because when we fight, solidarity.
Please welcome to the stage Seattle City Council member, Theresa Mosqueda.
Hello, Washington State! Are you ready? Are you ready to win in 2020? Are you ready to hear from the front runner for the Democratic nomination for President of the United States? Are you ready for President Bernie Sanders? Woo! That's right. We are ready. We are ready, and we're downright impatient. We're ready for a political revolution! What this country and this world has had to endure under Trump is cruel and inhumane. But with the help of every single person in this packed stadium, bright horizons are near and in the future! The future shines brighter when we have Bernie Sanders as a president. He will be the president to right historic wrongs. He is the president that will fight for health care as a human right. Housing as a human right. Child care as a human right. He will be the president that fights for workers' rights, protections for all, and the ready. The country is ready. We're ready not only because he has the most progressive agenda, but we're ready because we know he can win. He is capable of winning this election, and he is capable of uniting us from West Coast to East Coast, from the Pacific Northwest to the Midwest. He knows that we stand together for jobs and retirement security, for healthcare, for housing, from north to south. These are the issues that unite us, and these are the issues that will win in 2020. And politics is personal. And as a woman of color, and now with my new baby and my husband right over here as a new mom, I am proud to endorse Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. His agenda puts people who look like me at the forefront. Bernie makes sure that women and people of color and workers, the young and our elders are taken care of. We're no longer thought of last. We're not going to be on the back burner. We're a priority in his agenda, and that's why we stand for Bernie. The issues that we have fought so hard for in Seattle and Washington State, to raise the minimum wage, to pass paid sick and safely for every worker, to have paid medical care, paid family medical leave for every family, every partner. And just last year, to get the Domestic Workers Bill of Rights in Seattle, he will take these ideas and he will make them federal law. Now, these are the issues that we fought for in Seattle and right here in Washington State, but we also have seen the drier reality of an economy that disproportionately works for the billionaire class and the millionaires. We have seen this upside-down tax system right here in Washington State. And the consequence is that people are dying on the doorsteps of prosperity. The consequence is that we have more folks living homeless here in our streets in one of the most progressive cities, in one of the most wealthy cities, and in the most wealthy country in the entire world. That ain't right. We can do better, and Bernie gives us the option to do better this election. So why do we stand for Bernie? Because Bernie stands for fixing our tax system to end tax breaks and end corporate welfare. We stand for Bernie because he knows that we need housing across this country. We need density in our cities, and we need a place to call home for every single person. That's why he's fighting for federal investments in social housing for everyone. And we need a president who will fight for Medicare for all. And don't give me this crap about union workers not wanting Medicare for all. We do. As a union member, we want that because we know the first thing to go on the bargaining table is the threats to our health care. We know as union members that our health care should never be in the employer's hands. Take it off the bargaining table and give us Medicare for all. And finally, we are so proud to fight for him because he will fight for these domestic policies, but on the international level, we need a president who will say no to U.S. wars of aggression and occupation. We don't want to know who will be the next commander-in-chief or who will be a better commander-in-chief, as one of the candidates said. We want an organizer-in-chief! That's what Bernie Sanders stands for. Global peace, immigrant rights, the fight for climate justice. I stand for Bernie because he stood for us. Another world is possible with Bernie Sanders for president. And with your time, with your people power, by knocking on doors and voting by March 10th in this state, we will have Bernie as the next president of the United States of America. We can do it. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Sí se puede. Sí se puede.
Please welcome to the stage the founder and co-executive director of the Youth Climate Justice Movement, 0 Hour, Jamie Margolin!
Woo! Hola a todos, ¿cómo están? My name is Jamie Margolin, and I'm a proud Washingtonian and constituent of the wonderful Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. I'm a proud Colombian-American climate justice activist, co-founder of the Youth Climate Justice Organization, the 0 Hour Movement, and author of upcoming book called Youth to Power, A Guide to Being a Young Organizer. I just turned 18 years old, and I'm excited to use my new right to vote to cast my very first ballot ever for Bernie Sanders to become the next president of the United States. I'm here campaigning for Bernie because my generation's life depends on it. I'm here endorsing Bernie Sanders and showing my unwavering support for this campaign because Bernie Sanders is the climate champion my generation needs to tackle the climate crisis before it's too late. I'm a senior in high school right now, and I started my fight for climate justice back when I was a freshman at 14 years old. I sued my state government in a lawsuit called Piper versus the state of Washington, along with 12 other young plaintiffs, for contributing to the climate crisis and denying my generation's constitutional rights to life, liberty, and property. The lawsuit is arguing that the natural resources of this state are protected under the Washington State Constitution because right now the shellfish, the salmon, the orcas, and all of the wildlife of my beautiful Pacific Northwest home is dying due to ocean acidification caused by the climate crisis, and communities all over the Seattle area and all over Washington, including many of the indigenous tribes who are here today fighting for their land against the fossil fuel industry, are suffering from the fossil fuel industry. Right on the land that we are standing on, there is a fight to prevent more fossil fuel infrastructure that will continue to lock in decades more of climate disaster into our state. And so we must be supporting the indigenous organizers who are doing that work. The last 2 summers, my friends and I our city was shrouded in smoke from climate-worsened wildfires. And the smoke from the wildfires made my friends and I sick and sent some of my friends to the emergency room. Is this the future that we have to look forward to? 2020 is the last election. We have to put the right leader in charge of the most powerful nation in the world, someone who is willing to throw aside the status quo of putting profits over the earth. We do not have 4 more years to continue on the path of destruction of life on Earth. This is why the 0 Hour movement of youth from all around the country and the world endorsed Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. The youth movement is on the same page. From the Sunrise Movement to the 0 Hour Movement, we stand with Bernie Sanders because he is the only candidate in a very crowded Democratic field who fully grasps the intersectionality of the climate crisis and the revolutionary solutions needed in order to save all life on Earth before it is too late. Do you stand with the youth? Will the youth stand stand with Bernie because Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who has been a climate champion since day one. And if he were elected president, I would feel safe for the very first time in my life that my future and planet and the future of the planet is finally in good hands. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Sanders, for being a champion of the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal might not be the end-all climate solution, but it is a revolutionary step in the right direction. People call my generation Generation Z, as if we will be the last generation on a dying planet. But we are not. We are refusing to be the last letter of the alphabet. Instead of Generation Z, we call ourselves Generation GND, the generation of the Green New Deal. Green New Deal! 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 Thank you. The only thing that will save us is a new era. Bernie Sanders is the candidate who can help bring us into the new era of revolutionary change. You've heard of the Reagan era, the New Deal era. Well, the political revolution is here to bring about the era of the Green New Deal. Are you with me? Are you going to do everything you can to ensure Bernie Sanders becomes the next president of the United States? Are you going to stand by youth movements like the Zero Hour Movement and support us, and stand by young activists like myself and the young Indigenous activists in this room? Are you going to support us in our fights against the fossil fuel industry? Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the Bernie Sanders campaign for highlighting the voices of youth and letting me stand up here and speak my truth today. To end, I ask that you all lend your support to the movement. You download the Burn app to make sure that you get every one of your friends and family voting for Bernie, canvassing for Bernie. I encourage that if you want to support the youth climate movement, you follow the Zero Hour Movement on social media, as well as myself, to get involved. And I encourage you to do everything that you can in your power to make the largest youth voter turnout ever in history for Bernie Sanders. Can we do that? When I say what do we want, you say climate justice. When I say when do we want it, you say now. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Thank you so much. Muchas gracias a todos. Sí se puede.
Please welcome to the stage screenwriter, director, activist, and Academy Award-winning actor, Tim Robbins!
Wow! Way to go, Tacoma! I've been traveling around the country speaking on stages like this. You are one hell of an impressive crowd. I'm in this area this weekend. My theater company, the Actors Gang, is performing a show called The New Colossus at the Moore Theater in Seattle. The New Colossus tells the story of 12 refugees from 12 different periods of time, from 12 different countries, speaking 12 different languages, all seeking freedom, all with a common story, all with the story of saying no. I will not tolerate oppression. I will not tolerate famine. I will not tolerate fascism. I will not tolerate communism. I will not tolerate Nazis. And I will risk my life to seek a better life somewhere else. And after the show, the audience shares their own stories. And we hear amazing stories of survival, amazing stories of character, of strength, of courage, of kids jumping off boats for freedom to swim to shore, of children surviving long journeys on boats to create a new life here. But we also hear the stories of those that help them, like the people that harbored slaves when they were running away towards the north in the Underground Railroad, that risked their own lives to do that. We heard the story of a ship's captain who came to Ellis Island, and it was too late in the month. The quota had been filled, and the people at Ellis Island told him to turn back and go back to Europe. And what did he do? He went out to sea till the first of the month, and he woke up at 2 in the morning, and he sailed that ship in to be the first on the line at Ellis Island that month. And he got his entire boat of refugees in. And it's those stories that remind me and remind all of us of what incredible heart there is in this country. And it's rooms like this that remind me of the incredible heart that is in this country. And last week, when I was in New Hampshire, and every living room I walked into where people that were canvassing were meeting, every home had the smell of homemade soup. And every home had volunteers from all over the country and from all over the world that were volunteering their time to go out into the cold weather and knock on doors because they believe that Bernie Sanders is the most essential person in this race. That Bernie Sanders is the one that can unite us. As he said in his rally in Brooklyn, and I'll ask this question of you tonight, are you willing to fight for that person who you don't even know as much as you're willing to fight for yourself? Are you willing to stand together and fight for those people who are struggling economically in this country? I'm supporting Bernie Sanders for president because I believe when he says, "Not me, us," he means it. He understands that it's got to all of us that after he is elected, we need to fill this room again. And we need to fill the halls of state houses. And we need to fill city halls. And we need to demand that we are represented in this country. That people that represent us should be working for our needs and the betterment of all of us, not their rich donors. And I support Bernie Sanders because I believe he is the only one of these candidates that can send Donald Trump to an early retirement in Mar-a-Lago. Bernie beats Trump. 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 You made that pretty loud and clear. Now maybe the people behind those cameras will start listening to you. Thanks for coming.
Please welcome to the stage activist and the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the representative from Washington State's 7th Congressional District, Pramila Jayapal.
Hello, Washington State! How you doing out there, Washington? Do you know we have 17,000 plus people in the Tacoma Dome tonight? Are we going to deliver Washington State for Bernie Sanders? So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Pramila Jayapal, and I represent Washington's 7th Congressional District. And I am so proud to be the Washington State Chair for Bernie 2020. Now, I've been an organizer for 3 decades, and many of you know that I worked on immigrant rights. I started what is now the largest immigrant advocacy organization in Washington State, One America. I was on the committee that passed a $15 minimum wage in Seattle. I was out on the streets as an organizer in 2002, helping to organize the largest anti-war march against the war in Iraq. And I never really thought that somebody like me would run for politics. I was on the outside, I was an organizer. I'm an immigrant who came to this country when I was 16 years old by myself. But I realized something, which is that we organizers who are fighting for justice have to be organizing not only on the outside, but also on the inside. And so now, thanks to the 7th District, I'm the first South Asian American woman in the United States House of Representatives. I'm one of only 14 out of 535 naturalized citizens in the United States Congress. And I'm so proud to be leading progressives across our Congress and to be the lead sponsor with Senator Bernie Sanders on Medicare for all. Also on college for all. And to be building a movement for justice. Now, Washington State, we have always been on the forefront of everything, isn't that right? Our state has led the way on addressing the climate crisis. We have passed marriage equality in this state. And we have stood up for women's reproductive rights. Now, when we put forward some of our solutions, like a $15 minimum wage, you know what people said? They said, oh, that's so radical. That's just too ambitious. Well, let me ask you something about the agenda that Senator Bernie Sanders is going to lead as President Bernie Sanders. Let me ask you this. Is it radical to believe that every single person in the United States should have health care, guaranteed, comprehensive, universal coverage? Is it radical to want to protect our people and our planet and take on this climate crisis? Is it radical that working people should have one job that pays them enough to put food on the table and a roof over their heads?
radical, Washington, for unions to have expanded power to organize workers on the job? Is it radical to believe that we should have a humane immigration system and put those private for-profit companies out of business instead of incarcerating immigrants? Is it radical? Is it radical to fight for LGBTQ equality, including for my kid who is non-binary and for all the people who are out there? Is it radical to say we want housing and not handcuffs, peace and not war, and power for workers and not corporations? Let me tell you this, Washington State. We in America, we don't suffer from scarcity. We suffer from greed. It is not just that we have a right to these things. It is actually that we deserve them. We deserve them. We deserve solutions like a Green New Deal and Medicare for all and college for all. So it isn't that politicians don't know what to do. It's that they don't have the courage to stand up and fight those moneyed interests and the corporations that are putting money into stopping us from going forward. Now, I want to be really clear about something. We have to, in November, defeat the most racist, xenophobic, horrendous, cruel, uncompassionate, egotistical person that is president today. But let me tell you something else. We will defeat him, right? We will defeat him. But let me tell you something else. We're not going to stop there, because Donald Trump is both a symptom and a cause. And our next president has to be somebody that we know will implement that deep structural change that will right our economy and give it back to the working people across this country. Dr. Martin Luther King in his speech at the mall said this. He said, "This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism." What we need in our next president is somebody who will fight for us. Somebody who believes in that deep structural change that reverses decades of the worst inequality in the United States. Somebody who takes on institutional racism, sexism, and classism. What we need in our next president is somebody who understands he can't do it by himself. He needs a multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-racial movement to make that happen. What we need in our next president is somebody who is consistent and authentic and honest. Somebody who will fight for us not just when it's easy or popular, but when it's tough, who won't put his finger up in the air and look at what the polls say and change his position. Somebody who will fight for what is right. What we need, Washington State, is somebody who is with us when we dream bigger and bolder, and when we fight to make that real. What America needs, brothers and sisters and friends, is Senator Bernard Sanders to be President of the United States. One second. So, I want to say a word about this thing called electability. Now, there's a lot of people out there that said that Bernie couldn't win Iowa, and guess what? Bernie won Iowa. He won the popular vote in Iowa. There's a lot of people that said he couldn't win New Hampshire, but he won New Hampshire. There's people who said he's not electable in swing states, but take a look at the crowds showing up for Bernie in Texas and Colorado and California. And the people that are showing up are new voters. People that will expand the electorate. And guess who is leading in all of the national polls against Donald Trump? Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, Washington State, we have a primary coming up on March 10th. And it's our first primary. We used to have a caucus system, but this is a primary system. So we are going to need to educate everybody because our ballots come out on Friday. We need you to knock on every door, to talk to every person, to get your friends and family who didn't believe that there could be a president that really will fight for them. And we need them to turn out ballots. We need to deliver Washington State for Bernie Sanders. We are a generous and loving and inclusive movement that believes that a better world is not just possible, she is breathing down our neck. And with our hands, with our work, with our votes, we are going to turn this country around by electing a new president of the United States of America, Washington State. Washington State, are you ready to elect Bernie Sanders as the next president of the United States? Will you welcome to the stage the next president of the United States of America, Senator Bernie Sanders?
This is an unbelievable turnout. Thank you, Tacoma. Whoa. And let me begin by introducing you to the next First Lady of the United States, Jane Sanders.
Thanks for the warm welcome, Tacoma. It's great to be here with you.
Let me, again, this is just an unbelievable turnout. Let me thank all those who have spoken: David Bean, Deborah Parker, Sacred Family Canoe Group, Shama Savant, Theresa Mosqueda, Jamie Margolin. Let me thank Tim Robbins for being here tonight. And let me thank someone all of you should be extremely proud of, one of the outstanding members of the United States Congress, your Congresswoman, Pramila Jayapal. We are here tonight to focus on two enormously consequential issues. First, together, we are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. And no matter what your political point of view may be, we cannot have a liar, we cannot have a president who is running a corrupt administration. We cannot have a president who is undermining American democracy and our Constitution. We cannot continue having a president who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot. And those are his finest qualities. But it's not just his character, or more likely his lack of character. It is that he is a fraud. And by the time this campaign is over, the American people will understand he is a sellout to the working families of this country that he promised to defend. During his campaign, %, over 10 years. Donald Trump said in his campaign, he said, I am a different type of Republican. I am not going to cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. He lied. His budget called for massive cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Now, Donald Trump wants us to hate the undocumented. We're supposed to hate the undocumented, but when he was a private businessman, he loved the undocumented, hired hundreds of them in his resorts so he could exploit them and take advantage of them. Donald Trump says that corporations should not outsource jobs, but as a private businessman, he had his factories established in India, China, Turkey, Bangladesh, and Mexico, paying workers there starvation wages. So, Mr. Trump, you are a liar, you are a fraud, and the American people are not going to re-elect you. And the reason that the American people are not going to re-elect Trump is they understand that there are fundamental problems in this country that must be addressed. We will not accept the massive levels of income and wealth inequality that exist today. We will not accept an economy in which 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of our society, where the top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 92%, where 500,000 Americans will be homeless tonight at the same time as massive tax breaks have been given to billionaires. We're not going to accept an economy where over the last 45 years, real inflation accounted for wages for working people has not gone up 1 penny. We're not going to accept an economy where 45 million people are struggling with student debt. We're not going to accept an economy where many millions of our people cannot afford health care and where our people are being ripped off every day by the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry. And there is a reason why the very, very rich get much richer while the working class of this country struggles. There is a reason why Congress gives tax breaks to billionaires while 500,000 people sleep out on the street. And that is, we have a corrupt political system which enables billionaires to buy elections. So today we say to those billionaires who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to support candidates who represent the rich and the powerful. Today we say to Mayor Bloomberg, we are a democracy, not an oligarchy. You're not going to buy this. And we say to Mr. Bloomberg, you are certainly not going to win when you have a record in New York City that included racist policies like stop and frisk, which caused communities of color, African Americans and Latinos to live in fear and humiliation in New York City. You're not going to win an election when you opposed raising the minimum wage. You know, people who have billions of dollars should not be opposed to raising the minimum wage above $7.25 an hour. You're not going to win an election when you called for cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The American people, working families all over this country, want an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. And we're going to win this nomination. We're going to win here in Washington. And we are going to defeat Trump because we have the strongest grassroots movement in the modern history of the United States of America. We may not have billions of dollars to throw around, but we have hundreds of thousands of people in every state in this country knocking on doors. We won the popular vote in Iowa because in freezing cold weather, people were out knocking on doors. And we won the primary in New Hampshire because we knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors in that state. And that's why we're going to win here in Washington and why we're going to win all over this country. Now, we may not be able to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on TV ads, but I am extraordinarily proud that our campaign has raised more campaign contributions from more Americans than any campaign in the history of this country. And the average contribution is $18.50. This campaign is a campaign of the working class of this country, by the working class, and for the working class. And we're going to win this election because we have an agenda. Thank you. And we are going to win this election because we have an agenda that speaks to the needs of working families from Vermont to Washington. This is an agenda that says that in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you're not going to live in poverty. We're going to raise that federal minimum wage to $15 an hour in every state in the country. Women are not going to make 80 cents on the dollar. They're going to make the whole damn dollar. And at a time when millions of workers want to join unions, we're going to make it easier for workers to join unions. We're going to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure and create millions of good-paying union jobs. And we're going to put people to work building 10 million units of low-income and affordable housing. This is America. We will not continue having 500,000 people sleeping out on the streets. And we are going to profoundly change national priorities in this country. Instead of investing hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, we're going to invest in education. And that means universal, high-quality, affordable child care for every working family in this country. It means tripling funding for low-income Title I schools so that all kids so that all kids in America get the education they deserve, regardless of the zip code in which they live. And because we believe in education, we believe in those people who educate our kids, the teachers of America. Our goal is to make sure that no teacher in America earns less than $60,000 a year. And because we believe in education, we believe that all of our people, regardless of their income, are entitled to a higher education, college or trade schools. And that means we will make public colleges and universities tuition-free. Now, 12 years ago, as you'll recall, against my vote, Congress voted to bail out the crooks on Wall Street who nearly destroyed our economy. 2 years ago, against my vote, Congress decided to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to top 1% and large profitable corporations. Well, if Congress could bail out the crooks on Wall Street and give tax breaks to billionaires, Congress can cancel all student debt in this country. And when we talk about an agenda for working families, that means that we are going to end the international disgrace of our great country being the only major nation on earth that does not guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child. Health care is a human right, not a privilege. It is totally insane that today we are spending twice as much money per person on health care as is Canada or any other major country on earth. We are spending $11,000 for every man, woman, and child. The average working family in America spending $12,000, 20% of that family's income. But despite all of that huge expenditure, we have 87 million people, including many here tonight, who are uninsured or underinsured. We have, and this is a total disgrace, we have 30,000 people each year who die because they don't get to a doctor on time. We continue to be ripped off by the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, which in some cases is charging us 10 times more for the same prescription drugs sold in other countries. And if you want to hear a cruel and dysfunctional system, understand that every year some 500,000 Americans go bankrupt because of medical debt they cannot pay. What kind of system do we have when people who are struggling with cancer or heart disease or Alzheimer's have got to worry about financial ruin because of the outrageous cost of health care in this country? And that is why together whether the insurance companies like it or not, whether the drug companies like it or not, we are going to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. And what that system means is there are no more premiums for you or your employer. No more co-payments when you walk into a doctor's office. And we end the insane concept of deductibles. No out-of-pocket expenses. And because we're going to lower drug prices in this country substantially under our proposal, nobody pays more than $200 a year for the prescription drugs they need. And under Medicare for all, we cover dental care, hearing aids, eyeglasses, and home health care so people are not forced into nursing homes. And when we pass a Medicare for all system, we will save hundreds of billions of dollars a year and make certain that the average American pays substantially less than he or she is paying today. Now, our campaign, unlike many others, has the courage to look at the difficult challenges facing our country. Now, we got a president who thinks that climate change is a hoax. Well, I myself believe that Donald Trump is a hoax. And under our administration, we will listen to the scientists, not right-wing extremists. And all of you know what the scientists are telling us today. What they are telling us, and this is scary stuff, is that the crisis of climate change is worse than they had previously anticipated. They are telling us that the polar ice caps melting at a faster rate, oceans warming, drought more severe, extreme weather disturbances more severe. They are telling us that by the end of the century, there may be hundreds of millions of climate refugees who can no longer live in their communities because there is no water to drink or land to grow their crops. What we intend to do, and I'm very proud that we have introduced the most sweeping and comprehensive climate change proposal ever introduced by a candidate for federal office. And that Green New Deal, that proposal tells the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And that means that we will create up to 20 million good-paying union jobs as we transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Climate change is one of the great moral issues facing the entire planet. And to my mind, we have a moral responsibility, and I speak as the grandfather of 7 beautiful kids. We have the moral responsibility to make sure that future generations can live on a planet that is healthy and habitable. And I will tell you this, all of you know that climate change is not just an American issue. It's a global issue. And my job as president will be to tell the people in China and in Russia and in India and in Pakistan and Brazil and in Africa, all over the world, that instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, we should pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. And when we talk about a government that works for all and not the few, that means that we're going to bring about fundamental reform to a broken and racist criminal justice system. Together, we are going to end the absurdity of the United States having more people in jail than any other country on earth. We are going to invest in our young people in jobs and education, not more jails and incarceration. We're going to end private prisons and detention centers. We're going to end the so-called war on drugs and legalize marijuana in every state in this country. How many people here know somebody who was arrested for possession of marijuana? We're going to expunge the records of those who are arrested for possession of marijuana. And when we talk about broken and racist systems, we're going to bring fundamental reform to our immigration system. We are going to end the demonization of the undocumented. On day one, through executive order, we're going to rescind all of Trump's racist immigration executive orders. On day one, we're going to restore the legal status of the 1.8 million young people eligible for the DACA program. Under our administration, federal agents will never be snatching babies from the arms of their mothers. And we will not be throwing children into cages. And together we will do what the American people want, and that is comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. Every American, no matter what his or her political views are horrified and disgusted by the gun violence that we see in America. And let me just simply say this to you. Our gun policy will be written by the American people, not the NRA. And that means universal background checks. ending the gun show loophole, and doing what the American people want is ending the sale and distribution of assault weapons in this country. Now, as a United States Senator, I listen to a lot of speeches on the floor. And I hear speeches from conservative Republicans who tell us that they believe in small government, they believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people. And I say to those hypocrites that if you believe in getting the government off the backs of the American people, understand that it is women who must control their own bodies, not the government. And my promise to you is I will never nominate anybody to the Supreme Court or the federal bench who is not 100% pro Roe v. Wade. We will codify Roe v. Wade, put it into law, and we will significantly expand funding for Planned Parenthood. Bottom line is women control their own bodies, not the government. So here we are today in the midst of the most consequential election in the modern history of America. You got my vote. As a United States Senator, I fully appreciate the power of the corporate elites and the 1%. They have endless, and I mean endless amounts of money. They own, to a large degree, the media. They have tremendous control over our economy. Okay? They are very, very powerful. But at the end of the day, we are the 99%. And the last that I heard, I don't have a PhD in math, but the last that I heard, 99% is a hell of a larger number than 1%. So what that means, this is what that means. That means that if we stand together and not allow Trump and his friends to divide us up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion, if we stand together, ain't nothing gonna stop us. Now, Trump and the Republican Party are getting nervous. Wall Street is getting nervous. The insurance industry is getting nervous. The drug companies are getting nervous. The fossil fuel industry is getting nervous. The military-industrial complex is getting nervous. And the prison-industrial complex is getting nervous. And the Democratic establishment is getting nervous. And you know what? You know what? They should be getting nervous. And they're trying to figure out all kinds of ways, how do we stop Bernie and the movement? But they are not going to succeed. Because workers all over this country are demanding decent jobs and decent wages. Young people want a college education without going into debt. The overwhelming majority of Americans understand that health care is a human right, not a privilege. All over the world, people know we have got to take on the fossil fuel industry and save the planet for climate change. So that is why the establishment is getting nervous. Let us, right now in this enormously important moment, do everything that we can on Election Day here in Washington, not only to vote, but to bring out our friends, our neighbors, our co-workers. Let us have here in Washington the largest voter turnout in the history of the Washington primary. Let us go forward together. Let's win here in Washington. Let's win the Democratic nomination. Let's defeat Donald Trump. And let us transform America and create a government that works for all, not just the few. Thank you.